In today's lesson, we are going to jump into what Jesus taught us on the mountain. Now, this is found in Mateus, chapters 5 through 7. Now, we are in a series called Basics for the Master's University. But this is not really an episode of that series. So if you were following along, I'm kind of skipping ahead here, because I wanted to do a deep dive on something that I think is so important to understand. Now, before we get into it, just a quick announcement. This is the last week to register for our upcoming online conference, which is going to be March. Through the 6th, we have about 35 speakers from all over the world who are coming together to teach on various topics related to the New Testament, and I think you will find the sessions to be practical and helpful. It's absolutely free, although donations are welcome. You can find more info below. Let's jump right into this. Jesus was up on the mountain when he gave the Sermon on the Mount, and this is where he basically outlines his teachings. Wow. It's important to note that this isn't the only time that Jesus taught. There are many other instances where he taught, but this is one of the major times. And also the fact that it's recorded in Matthew's Gospel, which is written to the Jewish people, makes this very important. Now, there are several things that Jesus teaches us in this section. But in this video, I want to focus on 3 major points. No. 1. Blessed are those who mourn. No. 2. You have heard it said, but I say. And no. 3. Beware of false prophets. Let's dive in. Point: no one. Blessed are those who mourn. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 3, Jesus begins with 9 different Beatitudes or blessings. And the first one is, blessed are those who mourn. Now, this doesn't mean that people are blessed if they are depressed or sad. That's not what it means. To mourn comes from the Greek word peperni, which means to be sorrowful over sin. So this is talking about people who are sorry for their sin, who are mourning over their sin. Jesus says that these people are blessed. Why? Because God comforts us in all our troubles, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any trouble. So if you are someone who is mourning over your sin, then you are blessed because God can use you to comfort others. Point no. 2. You have heard it said, but I say. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, Jesus begins to go through the law, and he gives his teachings on various topics. And he often contrasts his teaching with what the Pharisees and the scribes taught. And he uses this phrase, you have heard it said, but I say. You have heard it said, but I say. This is found 6 times in Matthew's Gospel. It's found in chapters 5, 19, 23, 31, 33, and 38. Now, some people try to harmonize Jesus' words with what the Pharisees and the scribes taught, and they try to say that Jesus was simply correcting them on certain points. And while that may be true in some instances, I don't believe that that's true for all of them. For example, in Matthew 5:21, it says, you have heard it said that it was the people of old who said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But Jesus says, I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another woman commits adultery. So here Jesus isn't just correcting the scribes. He's actually going against what they taught. And he says that if someone divorces his wife for any reason other than sexual immorality, then he commits adultery. Now, the scribes were very legalistic, and in this case, they were upholding the law. But Jesus came, and he fulfilled the law. So what we see throughout Matthew's Gospel is that Jesus is giving us a new perspective on things. And he's showing us that the kingdom of heaven has higher standards than what the religious leaders taught. The religious leaders had many traditions that they followed. But Jesus came and he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. John 14:6. So Jesus is the ultimate standard. It's the same thing as seen when Jesus talks about murder. In Matthew 5:21 he says, you have heard that it was said to those of old, shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So here again, Jesus is showing us that he has higher standards, and he's saying that if you look at a woman lustfully, then you have already committed adultery. We see the same thing when it comes to divorce. In Matthew 5:31, Jesus says, again, you have heard it said that whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce, except for sexual immorality. But I say to you that whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another woman, commits adultery. So here, Jesus is saying that the only exception would be sexual immorality. We see the same thing when it comes to oaths. In Matthew 5:33, Jesus says again, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not take an oath at all, but shall let your yes be yes and your no, no.' For those who swear by anything, as you have sworn, so let your oath be. Should it not be so that you do not lie to the one another, since you are all brothers?" We see this also when it comes to retaliation. In Matthew 5:38, Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said, 'An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth.' But I say to you, resist the one who is evil, but flee him who wants to flee." So here Jesus is not saying that we should not retaliate, but he's saying that we shouldn't fight fire with fire. Instead, we should resist the wicked one, and we should flee from him. So in each of these cases, Jesus was not just correcting the scribes. He was actually going against what they taught, because the scribes did not have the correct perspective. They did not have the heart of the law. But Jesus came, and he taught us the heart of the law. And he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So Jesus is the ultimate standard. In conclusion, in Matthew 7:15-20, Jesus warns us to beware of false prophets who come to us in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. And he warns us that we can identify these false prophets by their fruit. So if someone claims to be a Christian, but their lifestyle doesn't reflect that, then they are probably a false prophet. They do not have the heart of the Father. So these are some of the major things that Jesus taught us on the mountain. This is found in Matthew chapters 5-7. If you enjoyed this lesson, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss future lessons. Also, don't forget that this is the last week to register for our upcoming conference, which is going to be March through the 6th. We have about 35 speakers from all over the world who are coming together to teach on various topics related to the New Testament. And I think you will find the sessions to be practical and helpful. It's absolutely free, although donations are welcome. You can find more info below. And until next time, Shalom.